This is part 2 of The Alchemist, read by me, ASMR Katz, in ASMR style. ASMR Katz. Hello my little mouse, and welcome back to part 2 of The Alchemist. Please put the headphones in your ear because you know or might already saw that this is a high quality recording. So when you have your headphones in your ear, you are able to hear the crystal clear sound you can't get when you have them on very bad speakers. Feel free to follow, subscribe, click on the notification bell and comment that this channel in the future can make even more projects like this. If you haven't read or listened to part 1 of The Alchemist, then click to part 1 and then after listen to part 2. So let's start. I'm the king of Salem, the old man had said. Why would a king be talking with a shepherd? The boy asked out and embraced. For several reasons. But let's say that the most important is that you have succeeded in discovering your personal legend. The boy didn't know what a person's personal legend was. It's what you have always wanted to accomplish. Everyone, when they are young, knows what their personal legend is. At the point in their lives, everything is clear and everything is possible. They are not afraid to dream and to yearn for everything they would like to see happen to them in their lives. But as time passes, a mysterious force begins to convince them that it will be impossible for them to realize their personal legend. None of what the old man was saying made much sense to the boy. But he wanted to know what the mysterious force was. The merchant's daughter would be impressed when he told her about that. It's a force that appears to be negative, but actually shows you how to realize your personal legend. It prepares your spirit and your will, because there is one great truth on this planet. Whoever you are, or whatever it is that you do, when you really want something, it's because that desire originates in the soul of the universe. It's your mission on earth. Even when all of you want to is travel, or marry the daughter of a textile merchant. Yes, or even search for treasure. The soul of the world is nourished by people's happiness, and also by unhappiness, envy, and jealousy. To realize one personal legend is a person's only real obligation. All things are one. And when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. They were both silent for a time, observing the plaza and the townspeople. It was the old man who spoke first. Why do you tend a flock of sheep? Because I like to travel. The old man pointed to a baker standing in his shop window at one corner of the plaza. When he was a child, that man wanted to travel too, but he decided first to buy his bakery and put some money aside. when he's an old man, he's going to spend a month in Africa. He never realized that people are capable at any time in their lives of doing what they dream of. He should have decided to become a shepherd, the boy said. Well, he thought about that, the old man said. But bakers are more important people than shepherds. Bakers have homes, while shepherds sleep out in the open. Parents would rather see their children marry bakers than shepherds. The boy felt a pang in his heart, thinking about the merchant's daughter. There was surely a baker in her town, the old man continued. In the long run, what people think about shepherds and bakers becomes more important for them than their own personal legends. The old man leafed through the book and fell to reading a page he came to. The boy waited and then interrupted the old man just as he himself had been interrupted. Why are you telling me all this? Because you are trying to realize your personal legend, and you are at the point where you're about to give it all up. And that's when you always appear on the scene, not always in the way, but I always appear in one form or another. Sometimes I appear in the form of a solution or a good idea. At other times, at a crucial moment, I make it easier for things to happen. There are other things I do too, but most of the time people don't realize I've done them. The old man related that the week before he had been forced to appear before a miner and had taken the form of a stone. The miner had abandoned everything that go mining for emeralds. For 5 years he had been working a certain river and had examined hundreds of thousands of stones looking for an emerald. The miner was about to give it all up, right at the point when if he were to examine just one more stone, just one more, he would find his emerald. Since the miner had sacrificed everything to his personal legend, the old man decided to become involved. He transformed himself into a stone that rolled up to the miner's foot. The miner, with all the anger and frustration of his 5 fruitless years, picked up the stone and threw it aside. But had he thrown it with such a force that it broke the stone, it fell upon, and there, embedded in the broken stone, was the most beautiful emerald in the world. I'm sorry, it's summertime. And I'm allergic. So I need to sometimes make my nose free. People learn early in their lives what is their reason for being, said the old man with a certain bitterness. Maybe that's why they give up on it early too, but that's the way it is. The boy reminded the old man that he said something about hidden treasure. Treasure is uncovered by the force of flowing water, and it's buried by the same currents. If you want to learn about your own treasure, you will have to give me 1/10 of your flock. What about 1/10 of my treasure? The old man looked disappointed. If you start out by promising what you don't even have yet, you lose your desire to work toward getting it. The boy told him that he had already promised to give 1/10 of his treasure to the gypsy. Gypsies are expert at getting people to do that, sighed the old man. In any case, it's good that you learned that everything in life has its price. This is what the warriors of the light try to teach. The old man returned the book to the boy. "Tomorrow, at the same time, bring me a tenth of your flock, and I will tell you how to find the hidden treasure. Good afternoon." And he vanished around the corner of the plaza. The boy began again to read his book, but he was no longer able to concentrate. He was tense and upset because he knew that the old man was right. He went over to the bakery and brought a loaf of bread, thinking about whether or not he should tell the baker what the old man had said. "Sometimes it's better to leave things as they are," he thought to himself, and decided to say nothing. If he were to say anything to the baker, would spend 3 days thinking about giving it all up. Even so, he had gotten used to the way things were. The boy could certainly resist causing that kind of anxiety for the baker. So he began to wander through the city and found himself at the gates. There was a small building there with a window at which people bought tickets to Africa, and he knew that Egypt was in Africa. "Can I help you?" asked the man behind the window. "Maybe tomorrow," said the boy, moving away. If he sold just one of his sheep, he had enough to get to the other shore of the strait. The idea frightened him. "Another dreamer," said the ticket seller to his assistant, watching the boy walk away. "He doesn't have enough money to travel." While standing at the ticket window, the boy had remembered his flock and decided he should go back to being a shepherd. In 2 years, he had learned everything about shepherding. He knew how to shear sheep, how to care for pregnant ewes, and how to protect the sheep from wolves. He knew all the fields and pastures of Andalusia, and he knew what was the face price for every one of his animals. He decided to return to his friend's stable by the longest route possible. As he walked past the city castles, he interrupted his return and climbed to the stone ramp that led to the top of the wall. From there, he could see Africa in the distance. Someone had once told him that it was from there that the Moors had come to occupy all of Spain. He could see almost the entire city from where he sat, including the plaza where he had talked with the old man, cursed the moment and met the old man he sought. He had come to the town only to find a woman who could interpret his dream. Neither the woman nor the old man was all impressed by the fact that he was shepherd. They were solitary individuals who no longer believed in things and didn't understand that shepherds become attached to their sheep. He knew everything about each member of his flock. He knew which ones were lame, which one was to give birth 2 months from now, and which were the laziest. He knew how to shear them and how to slaughter them. If he ever decided to leave them, they would suffer. The wind began to pick up. He knew that wind. People call it Levanta because on it the Moors had come from the Levant at the eastern end of the Mediterranean. The Levanta increased in intensity. "Here I am, between my flock and my treasure," the boy thought. He had to choose between something he had become accustomed to and something he wanted to have. There was also the merchant's daughter, but she wasn't as important as his flock, because she didn't depend on him. Maybe she didn't had even remembered him. He was sure that it made no difference to her on which day he appeared. For her, every day was the same. And when each day is the same as next, it's because people fail to recognize the good things that happen in their lives every day that the sun rises. I left my father, my mother, and the town castle behind. They have gotten used to my being away, and so have I. The sheep will get used to my not being there too, the boy thought. From where he sat, he could observe the plaza. People continued to come and go from the baker's shop. A younger comer sat on the bench where he had talked with the old man, and they kissed. The baker, he said to himself, without complimenting the thought. The lavender was still getting stronger, and he felt its force on his face. That wind had brought the moors, yes, but it had also brought the smell of the desert and a violet woman. It had brought with it the sweet and the dreams of men who had once left to search for the unknown and for gold and adventure and for the pyramids. The boy felt jealous of the freedom of the wind and saw that he could have the same freedom. There was nothing to hold him back except himself. The sheep, the merchant's daughter, and the fields of Andalusia were only steps along the way to his personal legend. The next day, the boy met the old man at noon. He brought 6 sheep with him. "I'm surprised," the boy said. "My friend bought all the other sheep immediately. He said that he had always dreamed of being a shepherd and that it was a good omen." "That's the way it always is," said the old man. "It's called the principle of favorability. When you play cards the first time, you are almost sure to win. Beginner's luck." Why is that? Because there is a force that wants you to realize your personal legend. It weeds your appetite with a taste of success. Then the old man began to inspect the sheep, and he saw that one was lame. The boy explained that it wasn't important since the sheep was the most intelligent of the flock and produced the most wool. "Where's the treasure?" he asked. "It's in Egypt near the pyramids." The boy was startled. The old woman had said the same, but she hadn't charged him anything. "In order to find the treasure, you will have to follow the omen. God has prepared a path for everyone. You just have to read the omens that he left for you." But before the boy could reply, a butterfly appeared and fluttered between him and the old man. He remembered something his grandfather had once told him, that butterflies were a good omen. Like crickets and like grasshoppers, like lizards and 4-leaf clovers. "That's right," said the old man, able to read the boy's thoughts. "Just as your grandfather taught you, these are good omens." The old man opened his cape, and the boy was struck by what he saw. The old man wore a breastplate of heavy gold covered with precious stones. The boy recalled the brilliance he had noticed on the previous day. He really was a king. He must be disguised to avoid encounters with the thieves. "Take this," said the old man, holding out a white stone and a black stone that had been emptied at the center of the breastplate. "They are called Urim and Thummim. The black signifies yes and the white no. When you are unable to read the omens, they will help you to do so. Always ask an objective question, but if you can, try to make your own decisions. The treasure is at the pyramids, that you already knew. But I had to insist on the payment of 6 sheep because I helped you to make your decision. The boy put the stones in his pouch. From then on, he would make his own decisions. Don't forget that everything you deal with is only one thing and nothing else. And don't forget the language of omens. And above all, don't forget to follow your personal legend through to its conclusion. But before I go, I want to tell you a little story. A certain shopkeeper sent his son to learn about the secret of happiness from the wisest man in the world. The lad wandered through the desert for days and finally came upon a beautiful castle high atop a mountain. It was there that the wise man lived. Rather than finding a saintly man through or hero on entering the main room of the castle, saw a hive of activity. Tradesmen came and went. People were conserving in the corners. A small orchestra was playing soft music. And there was a table covered with platters of the most delicious food in the part of the world. The wise man conversed with everyone, and the boy had to wait for 2 hours before it was his turn to be given the man's attention. The wise man listened attentively to the boy's explanation of why he had come. But he told him he didn't have time just then to explain the secret of happiness. He suggests that the boy look around the palace and return in 2 hours. Meanwhile, I want to ask you to do something, said the wise man, handing the boy a teaspoon that held 2 drops of oil. As you wander around, carry this spoon with you without allowing the oil to spill. The boy began climbing and descending the many stairways of the palace, keeping his eyes fixed on the spoon. After 2 hours, he returned to the room where the wise man was. Well, asked the wise man, did you see the Persian tapestries that are hanging in my dining hall? Did you see the garden that it took the master gardener 10 years to create? Did you notice the beautiful parchment in my library? The boy was embraced and confessed that he had observed nothing. His only concern had been not to spill the oil that the wise man had entrusted to him. Then go back and observe the marvels of my world, said the wise man. You cannot trust a man if you don't know his house. Relieved, the boy picked up the spoon and returned to his exploration of the place, this time observing all of the works of art and the ceilings on the walls. He saw the gardens, the mountains, all around him, the beauty of the flowers and the taste with which everything had been selected. Upon returning to the wise man, he related in detail everything he had seen. But where are the drops of oil I entrusted to you? Asked the wise man. Looking down at the spoon he held, the boy saw that the oil was gone. Well, there is only one piece of advice I can give you, said the wisest of the wise men. The secret of happiness is to see all the marvelous of the world and never to forget the drop of oil on the spoon. The shepherd said nothing. He had understood the story the old king had told him. A shepherd may like to travel, but he should never forget about his sheep. The old man looked at the boy and, with his hands held together, made several strange gestures over the boy's head, then taking his sheep and walked away. the highest point in Tangier, there is an old fort built by the Moors. From atop its walls, one can catch a glimpse of Africa. Melchizedek, the king of Salem, sat on the wall of the fort that afternoon and felt the lavender blowing in his face. The sheep fidgeted nearby, uneasy with their new owner and excited to be so much changed. All they wanted was food and water. Melchizedek watched all small ship that was plowing its way out of the port. He would never again see the boy, just as he had never seen Abraham again after having charged him his 1/10 fee. That was his work. The gods should not have desires, because they don't have personal legends. But the king of Salem hoped desperately that the boy would be successful. It's too bad that he's quickly going to forget my name, he thought. I should have prepared it for him. Then, when he spoke about me, he would say that I am Katz, the king of Salem. He looked to the skies, feeling a bit apart, and said, I know, it's the vanity of vanities, as you said, my lord, but an old king sometimes has to take some pride in himself. How strange Africa is, thought the boy. He was sitting in a bar very much like the other bars he had seen along the narrow streets of Tangier. Some men were smoking from a giant pipe that they passed from another to another. In just a few hours he had seen men walking hand in hand, women with their face covered, and priests that climbed to the tops of towers and chanted. As everyone about him went to their knees and placed their foreheads on the ground. A practice of infidels, he said to himself. As a child in a church, he had always looked at the image of Saint Santiago on his white horse, his sword unshattered, and fingers such as the kneeling at the feet. The boy felt ill and terrible alone. The infidels had an evil look about them. Besides this, in the rush of his travels, he had forgotten a detail, just one detail, which could keep him from this treasure for a long time. Only Arabic was spoken in the country. The owner of the bar approached him, and the boy pointed to a drink that had been served at the next table. It turned out to be a bitter tea. The boy preferred wine, but he didn't need to worry about that right now. What he had to be concerned about was his treasure and how he was going to go about getting it. The sale of his sheep had left him with enough money in his pouch, and the boy knew that in the money there was magic. Whoever has money is never really alone. Before long, maybe in just a few days, he would be at the pyramids. An old man with a breastplate of gold wouldn't have lied just to acquire 6 sheep. The old man had spoken about signs and omens as the boy was crossing the strait. He had thought about omens. Yes, the old man had known what he was talking about. During that time, the boy had spent in the fields of Andalusia. He had become used to learning which path he should take by observing the ground and the sky. He had discovered that the presence of a certain bird meant that a snake was nearby, and that a certain shrub was a sign that there was water in the area. The sheep had taught him that. If God leads to sheep so well, He will also lead the man, he thought, and that made him feel better. The team seemed less bitter. "Who are you?" he heard a voice ask him in Spanish. The boy was revealed. He was thinking about omens and someone had appeared. "How come you speak Spanish?" he asked. The new arrival was a young man in Western dress, but the color of his skin suggested he was from the city. He was about the same age and height as the boy. "Almost everyone here speaks Spanish. We're only 2 hours from Spain. Sit down and let me treat you to something," said the boy. "And ask for a glass of wine for me. I hate this tea." "There is no wine in this country," the young man said. "The religion forbids it." The boy told him then that he needed to get to the pyramids. He almost began to tell about his treasure, but decided not to do so. If he did, it was possible that the Arab would want a part of his payment for taking him there. He remembered what the old man had said about offering something you didn't even have yet. "I like you to take me there if you can. I can pay you to serve as my guide. Do you have an idea how to get there?" The boy noticed that the owner of the bar stood nearby, listening attentively to their conversation. He felt uneasy at this man's presence, but he had found a guide and didn't want to miss out an opportunity. "You have to cross the entire Sahara Desert," said the young man, "and to do that, you need money. I need to know whether you have enough." The boy thought it is a strange question, but he trusted in the old man who had said that when you really want something, the universe always conspires in your favor. He took his money from his pouch and showed it to the young man. The owner of the bar came over and looked as well. The 2 men exchanged some words in Arabic, and the bar owner seemed irritated. "Let's get out of here," said the new arrival. "He wants us to leave." The boy was revealed. He got up to pay the bill, but the owner grabbed him and began to speak to him in an angry stream of words. The boy was strong and wanted to retaliate, but he was in a foreign country. His new friend pushed the owner aside and pulled the boy outside with him. "He wanted your money," he said. "Tangier is not like the rest of Africa. This is a port, and every port has its thieves." The boy trusted his new friend. He had helped him out in a dangerous situation. He took out his money and counted it. "We could get the pyramids by tomorrow," said the other, taking the money. "But I have to buy 2 camels." They walked together through the narrow streets of Tangier. Everywhere there were stills with items for sale. They reached the center of a large plaza where the market was held. There were thousands of people arguing, selling and buying. Vegetables for sale among beggars and carpet displayed alongside tobacco. But the boy never took his eye off his new friend. After all, he had all his money. He thought about asking him to give it back, but decided that would be unfriendly. He knew about nothing the customers of the strange land he was in. "I just watch him," he said to himself. He knew he was stronger than his friend. Suddenly, there in the midst of all the confusion, he saw the most beautiful sword he had ever seen. The scabbard was embossed in silver, and the handle was black and encrusted with precious stones. The boy promised himself that when he returned from Egypt, he would buy that sword. "Ask the owner of that stall how much the sword cost," he said to his friend. Then he realized that he had been distracted for a few moments looking at the sword. His heart squeezed, as if his chest had suddenly compressed it. He was afraid to look around because he knew what he would find. He continued to look at the beautiful sword for a bit longer until he summoned the courage to turn around. All around him was the market, with people coming and going, shouting and buying, and the aroma of strange foods, but nowhere could he find his new companion. The boy wanted to believe that his friend had simply become separated from him by accident. He decided to stay right there and await his return. As he waited, a priest climbed to the top of a nearby tower and began his chant. Everyone in the market fell to their knees, touched their foreheads to the ground, and took up the chant. Then, like a colony of worker ants, they dismantled their stalls and left. The sun began at the pager's well. The boy watched it through a trajectory for some time, until it was hidden behind the white houses surrounding the plaza. He recalled that when the sun had risen in the morning, he was in another continent, still a shepherd with 60 sheep and looking forward to meeting with the girl. That morning, he had known everything that was going to happen to him as walked through the family fields. But now, as the sun began to set, he was in a different country, a stranger in a strange land where he couldn't even speak the language. He was no longer a shepherd, and he had nothing, not even the money, to return and start everything over. All this happened between sunrise and sunset, the boy thought. He was feeling sorry for himself. The fact that his life could have changed so suddenly, so drastically. He was so ashamed that he wanted to cry. He had never even wept in front of his own sheep, but the marketplace was empty and he was far from home, so he wept. He wept because God was unfair and because this was the way God repaid those who believed in their dreams. When I had my sheep, I was happy, and I made those around me happy. People saw me coming and welcomed me, her thought. But now I'm sad and alone. I'm going to become bitter and disrespectful of people because one person betrayed me. I'm going to hate those who have found their treasure because I never found mine. And I'm going to hold on to what little I have because I'm too insignificant to conquer the world. He opened his pouch to see what was left of his possessions. Maybe there was a bit left of the nant which he had eaten on the ship, but all he found was the heavy book, his jacket, and 2 stones that old man had given him. As he looked at the stones, he felt revealed for some reason. He had exchanged 6 sheep for 2 precious stones that had been taken from a gold breastplate. He could sell the stones and buy returning tickets, but this time I'd be smarter, the boy thought, removing them from the pouch so he could put them in his pocket. This was a port town, and the only truthful thing his friend had told him was the port towns are full of thieves. Now he understood why the owner of the bar had been so upset. He was trying to tell him not to trust that man. I'm like everyone else. I see the world in terms of what I would like to see happen, not what actually does. He ran his fingers slowly over the stones, sensing their temperature and feeling their surface. They were his treasure. Just handling them made him feel better. They reminded him of the old man. When you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. The boy was trying to understand the truth of what the old man had said. There he was in the empty marketplace without a cent to his name and with not a sheep to guard. but the stones were proof that he had met with a king who knew of the boy's past. They're called Urim and Thummim, and they can help you to read the omens. The boy put the stones back in the pouch and decided to do an experiment. The old man had said to ask very clear questions, and to do that, the boy had to know what he wanted. So he asked if the old man's blessing was still with him. He took out a stone, and it was yes. "Am I going to find my treasure?" he asked. He stuck his hand into the pouch and felt around for one of the stones. As he did so, both of them pushed through a hole in the pouch and fell to the ground. The boy had never even noticed that there was a hole in his pouch. He knelt down to find Urim and Thummim and put them back in the pouch. But as he saw them lying there on the ground, another phrase came to his mind. "Learn to recognize omens and follow them," the old king had said. An omen. The boy smiled to himself. He picked up the 2 stones and put them back in his pouch. He didn't consider mending the hole. The stones could fall through any time they wanted. He had learned that there were certain things one shouldn't ask about, so as not to flee from one's own personal legend. "I promised that I would make my own decisions," he said to himself. But the stones had told him that the old man was still with him, and that made him feel more confident. He looked around at the empty plaza again, feeling less desperate than before. This wasn't a strange place. It was a new one. After all, what he had always wanted was just that, to know new places. Even if he never got to the pyramids, he had already traveled farther than any shepherd he knew. Oh, if they only know how different things just 2 hours by ship from where they are, he thought. Also, his new world at the moment was just an empty marketplace. He had already seen it when it was teeming with life, and he would never forget it. He remembered the sword. It hurt him a bit to think about it, but he had never seen one like that before. As he mused about the things, he realized that he had to choose between thinking of himself as the poor victim of a thief and as an adventurer in quest of his treasure. "I'm an adventurer looking for treasure," he said to himself. It took a while until the book became more interesting, but I love books where you read between the lines. I can't say it more often enough. When someone asks me, what do you like to read the most? Drama, comedy, comics. Then I always say I love to read books who have a message between the lines. So you are more than invited to listen carefully and understand the messages between the lines. There's a reason why I read from Paulo Coelho, and I just can invite you to listen also to part 3. If you haven't already listened to part 1, do that too, please. Feel free to follow, to subscribe, to click on the notification bell, and to comment here under this video clip that I can even read more stories for you in the futures, who gives you a very deep message between the lines. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I hope I see you very soon at the next one. Wherever you are right now, feel relaxed and calm and have a joyful time.